years old. I've been doing sales leadership in tech for the vast majority of that. I think I had my first tech sales job 30 years ago in the UK. I have been in New Zealand now for nearly 16 years. All of that has been in the technology industry. So, without sounding like I'm blowing my own trumpet too much, but as we were saying before we came on air, rather than saying I'm old, I'll say I'm experienced. Some
Oh,
good, some bad, some in the middle. But yeah, I've been around the block a few times in businesses of different shapes and sizes. But the common theme has been sales and technology.
yeah, and you say you're from the UK. Whereabouts is home in the UK?
Um, that's an interesting one. Whereabouts did I come from in the UK is what I'll say, because I
Right.
consider I refer to myself as a Kiwi born in the wrong country. Right, I was very happy to leave the UK behind and give myself and my kids a better life in New Zealand. But I spent I can't say it, the maths don't work now, but when I came over, I'd spent roughly one third of my life down south in the UK.
Hmm.
Roughly, but well, I'd spent roughly one third of it in Sheffield, and then I had, when the maths worked, spent a third of it here. I've spent a little more than a third here now, but I spent half my life as a southerner, half as a northerner, and now I'm a Kiwi. So I've got some bizarre hybrid accent where when I go back to the UK, they think I sound like a Pom, but Poms think I sound like a Kiwi. Kiwis think I sound like a Pom, and vice versa. So go figure.
Oh yeah, like I've been born and bred in New Zealand, and someone's confused my accent with an Australian. Now,
That's
I'm not
fighting it.
quite sure where this thing that comes out of this gob gets lumped in the Australian accent, but tell them to clear their lug holes out. Hey, look, I'm particularly interested in your journey in leadership, and I don't mean having had a management or leading a team of people, but being in sales and taking people on a journey as a form of leadership, and certainly one I've had and participated in my career. So I'm just curious as to how you're seeing that and relating to all the digital stuff we've got going on now, transformation, this, AI, that, technology, this, in the context of
Mm.
your experience.
Yeah, no, and when you first mentioned the podcast and the topics and what have you, I mean, as things are right now, technically speaking, I'm not a sales leader, but in the concept or in the context of strong opinions, loosely held, I have been a sales leader, and I'm not now for some of the reasons we'll talk about in the next in the next hour in terms of what does it take to be a leader. What does it take to be a leader in sales? What makes you good at that, and what doesn't, etc. So I have been a sales leader. I built and sold my own tech business in the UK. It wasn't a big one. I had 12 employees when I left. I sold that to help fund our emigration.
Mm.
And I've led a couple of sales teams in New Zealand in my time. So I have got experience of leading sales teams, and I've got some thoughts on that. But also, I'm in the best place that I think my skills should be, which is in selling rather than leading sellers.
Mm.
So I guess my one of my strongly held opinions is that good salespeople do not necessarily make good sales leaders.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I've seen and often told the story, the best salesperson gets made the sales manager, and guess what? Next week, sales turn to shit because the skill sets are not, they don't necessarily cross over. Like, you have to understand those kind of things. But I think often the best person in the room gets confused as the leader or as someone that can get the best out of a group of people, right? I think I quit with John last week about, if you go back in the history of the All Blacks, there's very few All Blacks coaches that actually played for the All Blacks. It'd be an interesting statistic to work out. And not that, we all go to sports analogies because it's easy and that, but I think you're right in that regard. But in the context of engaging with a customer, you have to show leadership, right?
Mm.
So help me understand that kind of context and experience you bring.
I think, to be honest with you, Daz, that comes from experience. I mean, I've been you know, I mean, we're here to be honest, right? So it sounds like I'm being arrogant and blowing smoke up my own ass, pardon the French, but I've had a successful sales career, but I've always said I've never been through any formal sales training. That's not strictly true, actually. The slight diversion, but the only formal sales training course I went on was in the last job I had before I went into the tech industry, and that was working for a car dealership. And we went on this sales training course called Pendle. It was the Pendle methodology. It would basically be illegal in modern times. It was the equivalent of taking the car keys off somebody when they walked onto the pitch and not giving them back until you'd sold them something. It was an American dude. But where I was going is, since then, I've learned through the school of hard knocks, and one of the things I say, and I guess it is a strong opinion, sort of slightly loosely held, is that I don't believe I sell. I believe I help customers buy, which might sound a bit wanky and cheesy, but I certainly think today, Daz, and I mean, you've had experience on this on both sides of the fence as well. We tend to be dealing with sophisticated buyers. If I rocked up at your door with a pre-rehearsed cheat sheet on how to sell, I don't think I'd get past the threshold, if you know what I mean. Whereas I think if you can engage with someone who's genuine, authentic, appears to have some knowledge and experience, those are the sort of people that I would expect you to want to engage with. And frankly, they're the sort of people I want to help to buy, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I kind of think that the strategy now around selling is literally just being honest. I've always taken the view I can't sell anything I don't passionately believe in. So that's why I don't work for McDonald's. You know, but there's, you know, so I need to believe the technology that I'm promoting. I need to believe our ability to deliver, to support, etc. And you know, I don't know how that sounds to a listener, whether that just sounds I'm saying it because it sounds good, but you know, legitimately, mate, that is my truth. That's what I've held true through my career. Is if I don't believe it, don't tell somebody I do, and if I believe it's not right for the customer, I'll tell them, right?
Well, you know, look, you wouldn't be here if you didn't have that. I wouldn't ask you on the show, to be brutally honest and frank about that, because it's people buy from people, right? And ultimately that's what it comes down to, regardless of the methodology you've been trained. I've been through some of the most sophisticated sales frameworks training, you know, on the planet, having worked for Microsoft and other significant New Zealand companies that use those things. But at the end of the day, what it boils down to is, do I trust and can I understand the person that's standing in front of me, right? And it is a bit of a dysfunctional relationship in some situations. I recall a bit of a banging on LinkedIn maybe 5 or 6 years ago about the issuance of RFPs on the 15th of December to be back by the 31st of January, and people just were going, nah. You know, as salespeople, you're not even interested in engaging like that. So there's a bit of a two-way thing. But that still, I go back to, that requires a bit of leadership, thought leadership, being convicted to what you're bringing to the party, right? Look, that must have evolved for you over time, though. You were running a company of 12, I think you said, employees in the UK, and that's 16 or so years ago to today. Must have changed. So what does that look like for you in this rapidly increasing or vastly different tech landscape?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, rapidly changing would be the key, right? So the business that I had in the UK, believe it or not, and with your background, this will resonate with you more than it may some, but I set up a business delivering solutions based on Microsoft SharePoint, but it was back in the day when it was called Team Services.
Crikey, yeah.
So yeah, we were building out sort of intranets and internal platforms, doing lots of stuff on InfoPath and that kind of stuff. But why that's relevant is, for the 5 years that I had the business, what we did was pretty consistent, right? You know, I mean, SharePoint was evolving, and it became SharePoint from Team Services, but fundamentally, the platform that you're working on, the solutions you're getting asked for, the skills that you needed from a team to deliver were largely the same. Which I'm not saying made it easy, but it made it easier in that you could focus on being really good at something. What I've certainly noticed, definitely over the last 2 or 3 years, but probably it's been 6 or 7 years, is like you were saying, then the rapidly changing dynamic. Nothing.
Mm.
The only constant is change, right? I mean, and the pace of change is so fast that even for those of us in the industry, it's hard to stay at the front of the curve. And when you are seen as a sort of trusted advisor, how do you keep yourself at the front of that curve so you can sit in discussions with prospects and customers and actually appear knowledgeable and experienced when it's actually impossible to have much knowledge and experience because it only came out last week, sort of thing. So that's the biggest change for me, is the sheer pace of change and how you can keep yourself personally abreast of that, but also lead customers through that journey when to some extent you could say that you're learning together.
Yeah, there's. I often joke you need to be 10 minutes smarter than the rest of the people in the room to be successful, right? And I think that's even more appropriate these days. And I think the other aspect of it is choosing a lane and getting really specifically focused on something. I think about you, it's automation, it's the stuff, it's process oriented. That turns up in business. You've kind of always been that. So that's a form of leadership too, in my view, and staying sharp on those things. How do you context? So the technology is one aspect of it, and we all have varying degrees of it. But how do you go about contexting that for customers as you go about that conversation, leading them from where they are today to where they might be or could be tomorrow?
I think what I've found reasonably recently is that I feel you have to be really focused on the outcome that you're looking to achieve and the business problem, in inverted commas, that underpins that. What I've seen, and I've seen it 2 or 3 times, and AI is the latest iteration of it. But such is the prevalence of marketing, social media. The technology behemoths have got the budget to push the the latest acronym out there, sort of thing. And the last one I can remember of significance was RPA. AI is the latest one where you've seen all these memes on LinkedIn and social media where the answer's AI. What was the question, sort of thing? Everybody. I saw one this afternoon. It was a meme based on that Wolf of Wall Street one where he's saying, "Sell me this pen," and the dude's saying the pen's got AI, sort of thing. And I just thought that was classic, right? Because if it's got AI, it must be cool. But what the hell does AI mean? So yeah, I think that there's been a leaning towards selling technology, or even if we're not selling technology, to customers wanting to buy technology because they believe that is the silver bullet. I think the harder approach, but the better one for mutual long-term success, is focusing on the problem statement, for want of a better phrase. And I often say to customers, look, even if you can't describe the problem, what is the outcome? Technology is secondary. Let's focus on the outcome we need to achieve, and then we can sort of look at the best way of achieving that. And quite often in the engagements that I've done, there are significant benefits you can achieve to get to your outcome that don't require technology at all. Sometimes just a bit of process re-engineering, retraining of staff, looking at things from a slightly different perspective. Obviously tech has a place, right? But I feel like I'm sort of waffling rather than giving a straight answer. But hopefully that makes a bit of sense, is focusing on the problem and the desired outcome, rather than taking a technology-led approach where I work for an RPA company, so I'm going to sell you a shitload of RPA, or I think AI is the latest and greatest thing, so whatever I sell you has got to have AI in it. I think that's distracting a lot of companies and customers at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I like the shiny shit, the magpie syndrome, just like the next clever technologist. But the fundamental reality is they are answers looking for problems, right? And so ultimately, if you don't know what problem it is you're looking for, and whether that's a faster turnaround on month end inventory reconciliation, or whether it's doing quality grading on an animal carcass going through a production, it's kind of irrelevant, right? And providing that context becomes really important. Look, how have you found the change, particularly since pre-COVID? Remote work was a myth or whatever. I was remote working for Microsoft 15 years ago, but COVID kind of shifted us right really hard. Lots of people got caught short with that. I know you've worked remotely in roles for organisations too. So have you seen a difference in how you have led and how you go into leading those conversations with people and customers, and the context of being a little bit more distant from people?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think the big thing that's changed is expectation. So, pre-COVID, the expectation was for any meeting of any significance, you'd turn up, right? And you'd be at the prospect or the customer's office. And I don't think anybody stopped because there was no need to. Nobody really stopped to think about whether that was actually necessary. And if you're a prospect, right, and you're engaging with multiple vendors, I mean, I don't think the prospect or the customer even thought, is this a good use of my own time, or could I do this? But the reality is that the tech didn't support that either. I mean, Teams were the thing, right? But it had to be massively enhanced and upgraded, and so did Zoom. Just to is that there is now a more general acceptance that you don't have to have face-to-face in-person meetings for a lot of what we previously considered essential.
Yeah.
I think the technology supports it really well, but I do believe that anybody who leans towards that 100%, I can do everything remotely, is, I don't believe in that. And I mean, again, in the context of your sort of strong opinions, loosely held, my view is that the most important meetings are the beginning and end of any engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And those are still ones where there's significant value in face-to-face. I don't know what you think, Dan.
Yeah, I'm
not sure I would.
I'm kind of in the same boat in that regard, right? The establishment of a relationship is very difficult in a situation like we're on at the moment, right? Cool, these tools have become more ubiquitous and they get better and better and better. The quality, the ease with which the setup happens, but humans still need some level of interaction, right? And I'm a great advocate for being in places where you're getting work done. It doesn't matter where you are to do the work, but it becomes really important to consider the context of the work at that point in time, right? So if you're there to establish rapport and trust in those things, without saying I'm here to establish rapport and trust with you, you have to be face to face, right? There's some probably a little bit more tolerance for the, depending on the scale of the thing as well that's in front of you, right? And certainly I think what I've learned being in Dunedin, we have to reach out further and further to get the requisite skill and capability into the mix, right? That's no denigration on the people that I work with, but Dunedin, the living in Dunedin comes with a cost from being a little bit further away from the world. And so that also has its real good upsides, being further away from the world. But skill and engaging with people, there is an element you have to go out. I'm on a working group with Business South, which is the combination of the Otago Chamber and a board I was on a while ago, and we're just talking about how you bring enthusiasm to the Dunedin economy, and we've got to reach out, right? It goes without saying. So remote will play a big part in it still, but fundamentally, humans, it's all about contact, right? So
I don't think you can. Like you said, I don't think you can build trust and what have you remotely as well as you can face to face. I think there is that, I don't know what you'd call it, but call it sixth sense, whatever it is. People figure out whether they click and they're going to get on and whether they trust each other in that sort of face to face environment. I think once that's established, then there is a whole bunch of stuff you can do that's to the benefit of all parties remotely. But there are always going to be occasions when it needs to be face to face, particularly when the shit hits the fan. Hiding behind a webcam is not a great way to deal with challenges. So I think remote working has its place, but being mature and sensible enough to recognise when that's not appropriate and I actually need to hop on a plane and go and front up, sort of thing, that counts for a lot as well. And I've seen it in another sort of facet of tech in New Zealand is with the vendors. There are, obviously, because we are in New Zealand, generally further away from everywhere. I've seen numerous vendors who've attempted to sort of penetrate New Zealand, but they want to do it from Singapore or Australia and aren't prepared to invest on feet in the ground. And that has, I believe, limited success. It's those vendors that have actually been willing to invest in the country, put a body or two and front up for meetings, that have achieved the most success, probably for similar reasons.
Yeah, well, look, I can speak from personal experience there, and Microsoft, love them or hate them. There's all sorts of opinions and some not so loosely held on that topic. But Microsoft invested nearly 40 years ago about being in New Zealand and having a pretty significant local presence, right? And they reaped the benefit. And even up until the time I was kind of moving on in 2011, they were still by far the most significant international vendor in the New Zealand market, right? And Google were barely a twinkle in the eye of the New Zealand market. Sure, people were buying their stuff, but not the same. The engagement was quite different, and AWS at that point weren't even a real thing, to be fair. There's a big flip around, and both Google and AWS have a reasonable presence in New Zealand now in terms of the international footprint. But both, Microsoft's retrenching, they're pulling a lot more back to Oz and all of those things. It's quite different. So I think you have to be smart about those choices and where you're going. But ultimately, all of this tech does make it easier to get people in the mix, right, when you need them and so forth. So innovation, we talked about the rapidity with this industry moves at, and even in the last few years in this no code space, it's frightening. Like, it is frightening how quickly this is moving. Not because it's going to be ground shaking, but just staying on top of it. How have you found that in bringing the stuff to the customers you engage with?
Yeah, there's a couple of, there's numerous angles to that. I mean, the growth of low code has meant the absolute proliferation of different solutions, right? So, I don't know, go back 10, 12 years, maybe a touch more, but, we're sort of talking monolithic systems. You might have an ERP and that would do, the idea would that be, you might have one or two critical business systems which you'd lean on to run your entire business. And if you needed changes, then you'd wait 3 years for your ERP provider to build it into whatever release it was going to be in 3 years' time. I might simplify to some extent, but what's happened now is the technology landscape has completely changed. There are thousands of low-code providers, all with their own strengths and weaknesses. And what we're seeing now is a general acceptance that not only is it not unusual, it's more common to have 12, 15, 18 different applications or tech platforms in your business, because that enables you to have best of breed, and it enables you to have it immediately. It gives you agility and all those sorts of nice to haves or must haves in a competitive environment. But that brings along its own bunch of challenges as well. And then what that does, it drives industries in their own right. So I've done a lot of work historically with MuleSoft and Del Boomi, more recently with Workato. And Workato is an upstart that, in my opinion, they're 7 years old now, but that's a business that has been entirely created and driven and is going to global success because it's built around integrating low-code apps in a low-code way, right? So they've gone, holy shit, there's a whole load of low-code applications that now need to talk to each other. We better develop a low-code way to get them talking to each other. Do you know what I mean? So you've got a massive proliferation of apps, which is it's, on the one hand, it's very, very good. It's putting the power, I hate the phrase, but into the business, right? So IT now doesn't have to be this centralized gatekeeper, where everything has to go through IT. The more modern IT, or the more sophisticated IT teams, I think now are more enablers, so that they're enabling the business to solve their own problems. So I've found, relatively recently, that we are selling to line of business leaders or product owners and those things, rather than the CIO or the tech leader, the IT leaders. so that has its advantages, but it also has a whole bunch of risks that comes with lack of governance. Shadow IT. How do we get all these disparate systems talking to each other? So yeah, I'm not sure if that answers the question you're asking, but the landscape has changed, and that there isn't, you're not going into an organization to implement and support one or two systems where you may be the only vendor. We're now working in multi-partner, multi-vendor scenarios with multiple different tech platforms, and we've all got to play nicely together, right?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting challenge. You used the phrase the shadow IT, right? And look, I think that's born of the monolithic technology machine not being able to respond. And if you look at, and I'm going out on a limb here, I do it all the time, that the traditional IT pro or IT leader looks at that as a problem, shadow IT. And so on the right hand, getting really pithy with the organization for wanting something, and then on the left hand, not being able to recruit enough people to express the latent need that organizations have. Now, whether you're a 20 staff organization or you're a 6,000, there is not enough technology professionals on the planet to go around. So why the hell are you not looking at that gift horse in the mouth, shadow IT, and bringing them into the fold? They're obviously enthusiastic amateurs in most instances, but it's a gift waiting to help you solve these things at a scale you can probably never achieve on your own in a technology sense, right? And I think it's a missed opportunity, and it's actually, for me, it's an example of technologists being wankers. Like, I'll just say it straight out. We put these phrases and this notion of the ivory tower, you can't move without us being there. It's like, well, really? I still think, though, we're in the fringe where the no-code movement's moving to citizen development. I still think we're a way away from that, because you still need to think like a systems person and logic and all those, and there's skills that your average punter doesn't have, not because they don't and can't get them. They just haven't needed them for the role they currently do, right? So
I saw another meme. I won't explain it as good as it actually was, but it was related to shadow IT, and it was a cartoon image of a big burly dude who was the head of IT sort of thing, and there was a team of people behind him, and there was a light in front of him, and basically his fucking sizable body was casting a shadow over these people, and he was pointing over and saying, "That's shadow IT," but there was somebody stood to the left of him who could see them. And they said, no, I can see him clearly. The point being that they were only in the shadow because of his shadow. And it's where you put the light kind of thing. Shadow IT is only in the shadows if you leave it in the shadows, right? So, yeah, anyway, sorry. There's some that tickle me, and I think, I wish I was clever enough to draw that, and that was one of them.
Well, it is, and it's real, right? Those are the things as an aspiring leader or an incumbent leader in this profession. And even in non-technology leadership roles, the opportunities are rife, and I think you have to have a growth mindset and be open to exploring these things, right? The only way to get better outcomes is to be focused on getting a better outcome, and that requires taking the blinds down and opening your eyes to the opportunities that are all around you, right? Like, I'm on a crusade. There is no such freaking thing as an IT project or a technology project. I made the wild statement at a senior managers meeting 2.5 years ago. We're putting all this stuff in, and I will never use it. And people look at me incredulously. I'm like, well, none of the stuff helps me do my job. So it's kind of a little bit of irony. We talk about these big digital transformation, technology transformations. No, it's not. It's got to deliver a business outcome, right?
Oh, that's exactly right. That's what I was going to say. That's you sort of the point I was making earlier. That it's not an IT project; it's an outcomes project. We need to deliver better customer service. We need to reduce our operating costs. We need to, it could be anything. Improve our response time to support requests, whatever it may be. Technology may be a place, but if you make it a tech project, you're almost doomed to failure.
Yeah, there becomes an element of, what are you doing to us? And what I want to, my goal is to not even have that in the vernacular, right? There's no business led, there's no technology led. There is just an initiative that has different expertise sitting around the table, because that's how you make up a team to get a different outcome. Hey, look, you've been around a while. I think you said you were 52 earlier, same age as me. So there was a lot of dumb shit we did growing up, and it was never recorded in perpetuity by social media, fortunately. It's not to suggest they haven't done any dumb shit in recent years, but how do you see being in a role like you have in sales and the leading the customer in a social media world?
Man, that's an interesting one. That is a curly question. I mean, for myself, I'm an anti-social media person in the context of what I would call social media. I don't do Facebook. I don't do Instagram. I don't really know what Twitter is. Like or
Luddite.
X, whatever it is now. The only platform that I use with any regularity that I think would be considered social media would be LinkedIn.
Mm.
So, I mean, am I the right person to ask that question? I think, as a general rule, social media is a modern cancer that I would quite happily ban if I was president, to coin a phrase. Yeah, but how does that impact a sales role? I don't know. Is the honest answer? I think if think of social media in the context of things from a business perspective, it probably is more the likes of LinkedIn, and to some extent the Twitters of this world. I think that the challenge has become how the proliferation of disinformation.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost becomes a he who can shout loudest, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to sort the wheat from the chaff in terms of, when I'm getting bombarded with this all information, what can I trust and what, quite frankly, pardon my poor English, is total bollocks. And now you can dress that total bollocks up in a highly believable video that looks like Daz Monroe, and it's his face and it's his voice, but he never said those words, sort of thing. And so that I think is the challenge, is how do we help our customers and prospects sort out the truth from the noise, would be the comment.
Yeah, and it does become hard. Obviously, one of the only thing that people think AI is these days is the chat GPTs and that, and the volume of content and the rapidity that content can be created with these days is phenomenal. Look, and I use it to help me, and look, I even, just to have a little example of how much simpler, to pick up on what you were talking about earlier, more systems, rather than less systems, and they're probably more functionally specific than something that's broader, right? And I use a tool called ClickUp, right? So you filled a form out on my website, and that submitted, some really good information, and it dropped into a record in ClickUp. Now, ClickUp is not sold as a CRM or a project management thing, or it's kind of sold as all of those. It's a Swiss Army knife, right? My point is, the emails that you and I shared were captured in that, and all I had to do was click connect my Outlook email to it. And I didn't even realize I was just wanting to send an email from the screen. And then tonight, sitting with Leslie going, oh, I'll just have a look, because I was getting a notification on my phone, and I jump into the record in ClickUp, click a button that's the little ask brain, and it gave me a summary of our interactions.
Yeah.
That was a pipe dream 5 years ago. If you were trying to integrate CRM with all those other sources of information, it was hard. It was really hard and expensive.
Yeah.
So now it becomes a whole lot easier. But therein lies the challenge, right? Is the information legit? Where's it come from? How do you validate, and all those kind of things, right?
Well, that is the case. I mean, yeah, anybody who is prepared to use any flavor of AI at the moment without human supervision is taking, it's Russian roulette type of thing. So it absolutely has its place. I mean, I'm a passionate supporter, but the other challenge that I think is really interesting, I think has been underestimated at the moment, is everybody's doing it, right? So there was a time when AI was a differentiator, and there was a few who hopped on the early bandwagon. I guess it's like those who bought Tesla shares when Elon Musk first said he was going to take on the world. He's a bloody idiot.
Or Nvidia shares years ago.
Yeah, that's right. But what's happening now is that basically, to some extent, everybody's having a go at it, and the pace of that will only increase. And so there's going to come a point. I mean, I won't name names for obvious reasons, but I've seen organizations who built AI-powered products that are obsolete in less than 12 months because the tech giants have commoditized that capability, right? So what was really clever 12 months ago, because someone had taken a difficult to use and clunky AI thing and made it do something powerful but simple, it's all powerful and simple now, and it's getting even more powerful and more simple. And so in that environment, how do you differentiate when everybody's doing it? And like the most simple visualizations or manifestations of that. I mean, how many emails have you had that say, I hope this email finds you well? Oh, delete, clearly written by an AI, right? And and you see the posts on LinkedIn that all of a sudden have got lots of little emoticons and rockets flying off and stuff, clearly written by an AI. And so like everybody's now jumping on the bandwagon and just copying and pasting shite, and do you know what I mean? And the point I'm trying to make badly is that it will go from being a differentiator to actually it'll be a differentiator, but in the wrong way, because you won't be seen as being cool anymore for using AI. You'll be seen as slack and lazy. You just fucking written me an email with AI. You never gave a moment's thought to that. So I genuinely believe, and I guess this is another strong opinion, it will be those who learn how to wield the power of AI that will be the ones that will be successful, rather than just using it as a blunt tool for everything, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's 100% sort of where my mindset's at the moment. Like, it's enhanced my output. However, if I don't know what inputs to put in and then interpret and massage the outputs that come out, you fail, right? So where I find it hugely powerful, and we're talking in here, let's be really clear, with AI, all we're referring to is a large language model, right? Which is a very small subset of AI in general. It's the other thing that pisses me off, because we just say, the whole industry, it's AI. Well, what about all this other stuff? But the time that you will get freed up, so that's still that human interaction with it, right? And where I'm seeing some good successes automating tasks and doing the first cut.
Yeah.
But that first cut still has to have enough of you in it, i.e. your expertise. So this is quelling some of the fears that, AI is going to come and take all of the jobs. But you still have, your expertise isn't going away, right? And I think I quoted this when I spoke at that function a few weeks ago. It's just a tool. Actually, I quoted on a LinkedIn post today. Someone's going, "What's your AI strategy?" And I'm like, "Why do I need an AI strategy? I need a really sound business strategy, because AI is just a tool, just like a truck, just like a plant floor machine. It's no different. So don't be a dick about this. My world's not going to change just because AI. We'll do some stuff faster, maybe. We'll do some stuff smarter, maybe. We'll also do some stuff stupider." Yeah,
100%. Yeah, and if you believe what I was talking about, when we started around, the value of relationships and trust and credibility, what's a really quick way to destroy that, right? I mean, you work with clients over a long period of time. They get to know you. Presumably, the reason that you work with them for a long period of time is because there's some kind of connection, and that's another thing in sales, that some different relationships work with different people. So I won't be the right guy for everybody, and nobody is. But when you find that match and it works, it's because there's a mutual benefit and you enjoy working with each other. AI doesn't have a personality. It doesn't, like I use Kiwi British slang in my emails. I swear every now and again, and I make no apology for it. That's me, right? And the customers I work with presumably don't mind that. But if they suddenly start getting perfectly spelt, profanity-free emails asking how if it finds them well, they're going to go, that ain't Paul, you know.
Yeah.
And so he cares about me that little now that he's using a bloody AI agent instead of actually writing the email. So yeah, I genuinely believe it has its place, right? And probably but from a sales point of view, it should be in the background, not in the foreground.
Yeah, that's and like I said, looking at some of those automations, right? I still think there is real value in the human element, the sentience that's required for understanding, interpreting. You know, I don't know if you use Grammarly, but that thing shits me off. It's auto spell correct, and then it's correct. I'm like, that's not what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It might be grammatically correct, but that's not what I'm trying to say. you
No,
know,
I think in most scenarios, I think that the recipient would rather hear what you were trying to say in the way that you're trying to say it, rather than something that's been corrected by a machine, right?
Yes, it comes back to authentic, right? I guess that as a 50-year-old white dude, and I will share something shortly about that, a bit more context. I've come to realize that actually leadership is more about being authentic and showing up as who you are, right? If I go back and look at photographs through my career, I was suited and booted when I was working for GNI and Microsoft. I still present myself well and all that, but I always felt uncomfortable, and
yeah, and I think it's a really interesting one, because I think that the role of a leader and how to be a good leader naturally has to evolve with the landscape that's evolving, right? So when everything, and I don't think this matters whether it's technology or any kind of industry, when everything was reasonably consistent, change was relatively slow and could be seen a fairly long way off, you've got a decent horizon sort of thing, then having actual managers, back in the day when you could go to university, graduate and become a manager of something, having never done that something yourself, that may have worked, right, because of the nature. But again, and it's probably maybe a strong opinion, controversial opinion is probably a better one, but I believe now that it is much more difficult to be a successful leader if you're not in amongst it, because nothing's static. Everything is changing. If you're not exposed enough to the coal face for your experience and understanding of everything, the technology landscape, customer requirements, business problems, etc., to evolve, how can you lead the people that you rely on to go through that? Does that make any sense? That it's a different kind of leadership now than it was 10 years ago, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, absolutely right, and that's, I was reading something by, I can't remember the chap's name, Jeff Kaufman. Maybe he's talking about, the notion of the MBA. Certainly, I follow and really rate highly Alicia Mackay, probably said that wrong, out of Wellington. She spent a lot of time in local government and central government, but she has this philosophy, not an MBA, and because those things, the schools of thought behind those institutions hasn't evolved, right? Because it's a what's the guy talking about? It's a high ticket item, so there's prestige with getting in, and the cost to do it has gone up and up and up, and so people are still paying it, and they're not looking at it in a way that is actually bringing out skills that equate to the kind of today, right? And how that should be looked at in the context of leading. Like, that kind of leads me to, so in your opinion, strongly held or otherwise, how's the concept of work-life balance evolved in this digital age, right? I have a pretty strong view, but I'm interested in yours.
Yeah, I've got a pretty strong view as well. What I think has become more challenging in the remote hybrid world is managing that from an employee perspective. I mean, I'll give you my I'll tell you what I've done to address that. So even though I'm at home now because it's, we started this at 6:30, I didn't want to sit in my office in town. But even though I work remotely, I rent an office in a collaborative workspace, full of digital nomads is what they call us. But because I want the discipline of getting up, either cycling to work or driving if it's pissing down like it was this morning, sort of thing, and being able to leave it behind and come home at the end of the day, there's something about that discipline and that productivity, and it helps with the work-life balance. I did for some time try working from home, but I found that the line was too blurred between what's work and what's not. And the important thing as well, it's not just for us, it's for those around us, our friends and family, right? I mean, I may still be working at 25 to 6, but my missus doesn't necessarily know that, and nor do the kids. And I think work-life balance in a remote world is considerably more challenging if you're working from home. For me personally, like I say, I pay to rent an office that I have the discipline of getting up and going to, and just as importantly, leaving behind at the end of the day. But then I get people asking me to jump on podcasts at 6:30 at night.
Sorry.
That's okay, mate. I'm avoiding the chaotic dinner time period, so I'm very grateful. Let's do it.
Well, hopefully I'm going up. This is my once in a fortnight where I skive off to my office downstairs and I've negotiated dinner being ready when I get back. But that these things, right? We're more connected than we've ever been in history. And I contend we're less connected than we've ever been in history because of this.
Totally.
And the technology, and that's our generation has to take. To your point about social media and all that, and had it not been for these, social media wouldn't have had that same impact. But I think there's an element of responsibility. We're talking about sustainability on a local, national, global basis at the moment. And to me, sustainability isn't just about the earth. And absolutely, that's crucial, right? Because if the earth's not here, then we're not. But sustainability of us as a society, as a species, as a whatever, mental health and well-being has gone down the shitter, and that has a lot to answer for, right? That's not just Daz's strong opinion, because there's science and evidence that backs that up, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what I think I made the comment earlier. I view social media as a modern cancer, and it'd be a type of cancer that I'd put alongside online gaming and things like that. It might not be bang on the topic that we're talking about, but I got my own children. They're older, in their late 20s, successful in their own right, sort of thing. So I first raised kids some considerable time ago. I've been with my current partner for 6 years. She has younger children, so I'm lucky enough to be doing the whole thing again. And holy cow, the change in raising children now, because of the advent of just constant social media, constantly being bombarded from all angles. I remember when my kids were kids, they'd sit in a bedroom and play Mario Kart with a cabled controller on a Super Nintendo sort of thing. And it was all
Wi-Fi.
it was all quite quite sociable, because the only way you could play with your mate is if your mate came and knocked on the door and sat up in your bedroom and did it, right? Whereas we've got about 15 different apps and devices to limit access to this, that, and the other on all the tech platforms, because they're just bombarded by by social media and peer pressure coming from every angle, which is not necessarily related to the business world, but that's a sign of change, right? And what we're all going through, and these are the people who are going to be leading our organizations in 10, 15 years' time.
Yeah, that's right. And I do have to sit here and go, it can be the crusty old dude, kind of having a commentary on these things, and we'll always maintain an opinion, but we have to be practically looking out for the future, not just about these other little bit, more physical, obvious things, right? There's a whole lot of physical and mental and well-being related things that are happening due to technology. We're sitting more, we're exercising less, and our mental. There's times where I'm not inclined to go outside because I have no need to. So you have to be motivated to do those things, right? And it's not that there's this resistance that gets built up around us. So it becomes important. Like, there's a leadership role just in that, right? As the generation that was responsible for all of the stuff. Like, there's no one else. It was our generation that invented the shit. So there's some level of accountability and responsibility I think we have to take as we
Yeah, and I think
move
that
on.
mental health thing as well. I think that there's a big gotcha there in relation to hybrid working. And I mean, I realised it was having an impact on me, and that is, I think it's easy to underestimate the mental health benefit, but of being in a team environment. You don't realise the benefit of banter and a bit of interaction and and stuff like that, and a problem shared and what have you, until you don't have it anymore. And
Yeah.
like you can argue that it's more productive to sit in a home office because you're not getting any distractions. I would argue that some of those distractions increase your productivity because they make you more human. And so, part of the reason I pay for a shared office with a bunch of other digital nomads is they're all in the same boat, and we can talk shit with each other and have a smoker at 10:30 and have a coffee. And they may not be working for the same company as me, but we're all in the same boat where we want a bit of human interaction and company. And then, so I think you sort of underestimate the value of that at your peril.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, right? And I think the place of work and employment has evolved so much since, when we were probably before, like our parents, for example. It was a job for life kind of thing. There was a paycheck, and you evolved, and you it was a real clear 30-hour week or 35, 30, whatever the per week rate was. And now, being connected, and these things that people walk around wearing with a badge of honor. Oh, I've done 80 hours this week and 100 hours, like rubbish. You haven't, because you've been productive for about 35 of them. The rest of it was just bollocks. So, but there's still that element of human connection that is really, really crucial, right? I've shared a thought around, or this is a strong opinion that I have, that, if you look at church and religion in society, that's kind of it's fading into the background, and it's not so mainstream anymore. And that's the tell on that is you're just walking around and seeing how many churches are being converted into the next home or whatever, or knocked down, right? So there's a massive social fabric there. It's not about the religion for me, but that social fabric that comes with that. And I'd contend the likes of CrossFit, F45, these things that are people coming together, filling the gap. Like, I owned a couple of CrossFit gyms, and the leadership in that was bringing people in. None of us knew what we did for a job. Didn't matter. But the social fabric, we'd go out after the workout. Saturday morning was a big event for 30 of the members. So these things are really crucial to us as humans because we're social creatures, right?
Yeah. Well, my I don't so much do the gym thing, but my version of that, and I know you're into your motorbikes as well, but motorbike club, right? It's not just about being out on the bike, but it's about having a group of people that can go and sit in a pub or whatever, in a cafe, and have a yarn about shit, just because it's a way to come together. And as you say, that's becoming less and less common. And I think from a business point of view, that's one of the bigger challenges now for companies, is how do you maintain a kind of team spirit and that camaraderie and the benefits that come from that when if you've got a significant proportion of your workforce dispersed and not in the same place, right?
Yeah, it does. It comes with notwithstanding there are remote offices and all those sort of things, but even that's difficult, right? We have 4 primary corporate locations, and clearly we've got plants all over the place. But these people I've never met that are in all of those other locations, right? And it's a different relationship than someone that's sitting that I see every day, or at least every week. It's very different, right? And so you have to be intentional about how you strike out as a leader to engage with people that aren't directly in your line of sight. I think that's key. You travel, you do that. To establish those relationships, and the rapport that's required to have a meaningful relationship. I'm not it doesn't have to be like a deeply personal relationship, but even in the context of working with others, at the end of the day, you have to be willing to, engage and get on with stuff, right? So,
yeah,
I'm just the mental health one is a big one for me in leadership. That's becoming a lot more apparent. And with the risk of going miles off track with only a real fraction of the time, what's your experience with? There's a lot more like ADHD or mental health challenges that are becoming, the stigma's become a lot less. It's still got a long way to go, don't get me wrong. But
yeah. I mean, I
as you
think,
navigate with people,
yeah, there is a much greater recognition and acceptance of neurodiversity, and as you say, not just the stigmatizing, but not viewing things as a disability in inverted commas, but potentially as a superpower if they're nurtured and encouraged. I think one of the things I do take some comfort in is that the world is changing in that regard. Again, conscious of the time. By the way, I don't have a hard stop at 7:30, but we probably don't want to waffle on for too long. But I went up to a mate's housewarming party on Saturday night, and it was outside of a beautiful new house in Nelson, and a fire pit in the garden, and much beer was flowing, and everybody stood around. And as the evening went on and the drinks got consumed and what have you, there's a bunch of lads sat there, and anybody from old buggers like me to younger lads in their 20s, but the conversation actually became about mental health, and there was young lads talking about how they'd got crippling anxiety and were going to counselling and this, that, and the other. And I talked about some of my own journey and stuff like that. And I had that kind of, that moment where you think, man, like the world has changed. Like 5 years ago, you wouldn't sit around a fire getting pissed and other stuff and be talking about mental health without fear of being ostracized and and abused, sort of thing. But it generally seems now that there's more of an acceptance that yeah, we're burning ourselves out, right? And that's not a flag of honor. It's it's a danger, and as humans we need to recognize that, and as employers and leaders we need to recognize that people working every hour God sends, and replying to emails at 2:10 in the morning as a sign of a dedicated employee. There's something seriously wrong there, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, it is. It's recognizing it though, and being able to have conversations. So there's one piece of advice that I offer willingly to aspiring leaders and managers and so forth is get comfortable with stuff. Like you don't have to be a counselor and a psychiatrist and all that, but you have to be prepared to have conversations that aren't just about the project that the individual's working. Actually, that's piss poor management. If you're just sitting there talking about those task-oriented things, you've got room for growth. And like, I don't get it right every day, and some days I'll openly admit I will keep it in that lane, about what were you doing the other day, because I don't have the energy to get into the other side of the conversation. But on a good day, you'll get both sides from me, and I believe that's really important, right? As a leader, and I honestly think that's where leaders surprise themselves and actually what the role is about. Becoming a good, effective manager is not about looking at widgets and what's ticking over and productive output and all those kind of things. It's a people job.
100%, yeah. And to be honest, and it's sort of circling back to conversation we had when we started. I've had sales, leadership, director roles, etc. My preference is to be pure sales. I don't mind leading by example and leading customers on a journey, but the skills required to be a leader of a sizable and dispersed group of people is not something I claim to be good at. I can muddle on through and try it, but I think the skill set is very different. And it took me to the ripe old age of, I don't know, 48, 49 to realize actually I'm better off doing, there's that societal and peer pressure that to progress in your career, you've got to get promoted up the ladder. And, if you get to 52 and you're still a fucking salesman, but actually it's the best job I've ever had. I love doing what I do because I'm good at it. I enjoy it, and people must think I'm reasonably good at it as well, kind of thing. And I think it requires a specific skill set to be a good manager, particularly in the modern age sort of thing. And yeah, I don't profess to have that.
Yeah, look, and I think it's a choice too. It's an intent. I made a choice circa 2006 when I was at Gen I still remember having the conversation with someone who I respected as a mentor, and Chris Quinn. And, he's interviewing me as part of that move. And he actually interviewed me as I was leaving, going to Microsoft as well. And, those are the moments that you reflect on and the sage advice you get on the way through. And all I can hope for now is giving those back. I've got much smarter people in my team in terms of the skill set and the roles that I've done in the past. But that's not my role anymore. Sometimes I just love to do it. Like I said earlier, not every day I'm 100% on my game. So those for me are often that's the comfort space that you can go back to, right? But as an aspiring leader, like if I was saying to myself when I was 25, the piece of advice I'd be giving myself: be really prepared to go deeper than just the surface level things you think being a manager is. Being comfortable, being vulnerable. I think that's one of the and vulnerable to the point of safe. There's stuff you just you know not to share. Where that's a kind of tested boundary in that. What would be one piece of advice you'd give your 25-year-old self if you had it over?
I think, to be honest with you, Daz, I think it would be along the lines of focusing more on understanding what's right. If I'm talking to my 25-year-old self, on what's right for you and is going to fulfill you, rather than what you think others will think of you. In terms of doing what you want because it's personally and meaningfully fulfilling, rather than what you think society or whatever expects you to do. Would be something along those lines.
Yeah, I think that's key. And I'm seeing like a lot of like my kids are, my two daughters are twins coming up, 25, 24. Ooh, just about got that one wrong. 25, sorry, next year. I did get it wrong. And, they're making good choices. They're making some bad decisions too, but, you've got to roll with that. But they're certainly doing things they've found some joy in what they do. And I do believe that's important, right?
Yeah, I mean, very, very quickly, my kids, my youngest has just turned 27. He's just graduated as a policeman. No history of that in our family whatsoever, but he has genuinely done that. He clearly hasn't done it because money motivates him. He's done it because he wants a fulfilling job, and he has a really burning desire that he wants to give something back, right? And so I think, good on you. He's made his decisions for values that are true to him. My older son spent 6 years in the army and is just going through the process now of becoming a fireman for similar reasons. So good on them in that they seem to be making choices based on what will actually fulfill them, rather than they think what might make them rich or make other people happy, sort of thing. So I think there's a huge amount to be said for that.
Yeah, look, and that's all about personal leadership. If there's one thing I'd be wrapping up on, I think the theme or the general gist of our discussion tonight has more been in that space of personal leadership and the choices you get to make through your journey. They become really important, and they're no less important for yourself and the own way you lead and you go about conducting yourself and engaging with others with all of the challenges that we're faced with today in this changing world. And being able to just control the controllables and don't worry about the stuff you can't control become really important, right? Look, I appreciate your time, Paul, and having jumped on with me and shared a bit of your journey. And I'm sure others that have listened or will listen will get some insight and value. That's been my goal with this. And
no, it's awesome. No, I appreciate having me on. I appreciate you doing it. And I think, the more people like yourself are willing to open up and get us to open up, that's one thing I've learned as well. The more open and honest you are with people, the more they tend to reciprocate. So yeah, good on you for hopefully I haven't bored you too much. I've really enjoyed it. It's amazing how fast an hour can vanish when you're talking.
Well, yeah, I mean, good conversation, and stimulating, and there'll be nuggets in there for someone, whether we know it or not. That's what I've found. This just gets easier each time I do it. So thanks everyone, and we will be back, or I'll be back in a couple of weeks with my next guest on strong opinions loosely held. So we'll catch you in a fortnight. Thanks, team.
Good stuff. Cheers, Daz. Take care.